He thought he was just saving an old man. Until that night, the tavern he inherited began whispering secrets buried for 70 years. A former Navy SEAL and his loyal K9 pull a stranger from a collapsing pit, never expecting the rescue to tie them to an abandoned tavern on a mist-covered Montana lake. But when the floors moan, lights flicker, and hidden chambers reveal themselves, the truth waiting beneath the wood threatens to upend everything they know. The storm had settled over northern Montana like a heavy blanket, dense and unmoving, swallowing the sky until only streaks of silver remained. Logan Hale drove slowly along the narrow forest road, the wipers beating a steady rhythm across the windshield. It wasn't the kind of silence he feared. This silence was clean, honest, born from wind and wilderness, the kind that helped him forget the echo of explosions he still heard in his sleep. For a moment, the world felt still enough to breathe. Shadow sat tall in the passenger seat, his silhouette sharp against the dim glow of the dashboard. The Malinois had the posture of a soldier even when resting, neck straight, ears tilted slightly forward, as if listening to something beyond the cab's metal frame. Logan glanced at him. "Easy, buddy," he murmured. "Just a storm, nothing more." But Shadow didn't blink. His amber eyes stayed locked on the dark tree line outside. The pines bent beneath the wind, their tips fluttering like distant flag signals. Logan tightened his grip on the steering wheel when Shadow shifted, slow at first, then abruptly tense. His ears shot up, a low growl rolled out of his throat, barely audible over the storm. Logan frowned and eased off the gas. "What is it?" he whispered, though he already trusted Shadow's instincts more than he trusted his own. Shadow whined once, sharp and urgent, then pawed the door. Logan rolled down the window an inch, letting frigid air whip inside. At first, all he heard was the hiss of sleet brushing the hood. Then, faint, almost swallowed by the storm, came a sound that raised the hairs on Logan's arms. A voice. A cry. Weak. Fractured. Human. Logan cut the engine. The sudden silence was startling, the kind that makes you feel watched. Shadow was already moving, jumping from the truck and landing in the snow with practiced grace. Logan grabbed his flashlight, tucked his jacket tighter around his shoulders, and followed the dog into the dark. The beam of light cut through the storm, revealing a forest twisted with shadows and white. Shadow trotted ahead, nose low to the ground, tail straight and alert. "Track," Logan whispered. The dog responded instantly, veering left into thicker brush. Branches slapped against Logan's coat as he pushed through, but he didn't slow. He could hear the cry again, clearer this time, edged with pain. "Help! Someone! Please!" Shadow barked once, a sharp signal. Logan found him standing at the edge of a slope, the beam of his flashlight bouncing off something too smooth to be dirt. A cavity in the ground, a collapsed pit. Snow gathered around the rim like a jagged halo. "Down here!" The voice came from the hole, older, trembling. "God, I thought I was done for." Logan dropped to his stomach and aimed the light down. An elderly man lay wedged between broken roots and packed earth. His leg twisted awkwardly under him. His face was pale, lined, and weather-worn, framed by wet silver hair. Sleet clung to his jacket like glass beads. "Hang on," Logan called. "We're getting you out." He scanned the rim, unstable, crumbling. A straight pull would collapse the whole slope. He needed leverage, needed control. Muscle memory took over. He looped his rope around a fallen trunk, tested tension, then slipped down carefully, using Shadow's steady presence above like a lifeline. The old man winced. "Leg might be broken," he gasped. "Fell through checking my traps. Stupid thing to do in a storm." "Storm's not your fault," Logan said, his voice firm but calm. "You're not dying out here tonight." He slipped the rope under the man's arms and secured it, feeling the tremors in the man's body. "What's your name?" "Henry? Henry Dawson?" "All right, Henry. I'm Logan. On my count, we're going up." He tugged twice, Shadow's signal. The dog braced his paws and pulled on the rope, anchoring it with surprising force. Logan pushed from below, guiding Henry upward, inch by inch, until finally the man collapsed onto the snowy ground with a ragged breath. Logan climbed out and knelt beside him. Henry's teeth chattered violently. You saved me," he whispered. "Didn't think anyone would be out here." "Wasn't planning on it," Logan replied. He wrapped his jacket around the old man's shoulders. "Shadow heard you first." Henry's gaze drifted to the dog, who sat close, watching him with steady eyes. "Good boy," Henry whispered. "Smart boy." Logan looked around, the storm tightening into a white curtain. The peace he'd felt moments ago was gone, replaced by the sharp edge of responsibility, the urgency of a life depending on him. He hoisted Henry carefully and carried him toward the truck. The road ahead would be slow, the storm unforgiving, but Logan had no intention of leaving a man behind. Not again. Not ever. Shadow circled them once, then trotted ahead, clearing the path with quiet confidence. And as Logan settled Henry into the passenger seat, the old man murmured through chattering teeth, Don't let them take the tavern." Logan stiffened. What tavern? But Henry had already slipped into unconsciousness. The storm howled outside, swallowing the forest whole. Inside the truck, Logan felt the shift, peace collapsing into urgency, calm giving way to something darker. The night was no longer just a storm. It was the beginning of something else, something waiting in the shadows of Blackwater Lake. Logan drove slowly through the storm, the old truck rattling as if protesting each mile. Henry Dawson lay slumped in the seat beside him, wrapped in blankets, his breathing shallow but steady. Shadow sat in the back seat, eyes fixed on Henry the entire ride, ears twitching at every groan or shift the old man made. The dog's posture never softened, not once. He stayed alert, tense, as if he sensed the night had turned into a battlefield with invisible enemies. When the headlights finally cut through the curtain of sleet, Logan saw it. A wooden building perched at the edge of the lake. The sign hanging crookedly above the porch read, Blackwater Tavern, letters chipped and faded by time. It rose out of the fog like a shipwreck washed ashore, a ghost from another era. Logan pulled as close to the steps as he could. The lake behind the tavern stretched wide and dark, its surface unmoving despite the storm. It almost looked solid, like glass too cold to break. Shadow jumped out first, landing silently in the snow. Logan carried Henry up the steps, the boards groaning beneath his weight. When Logan nudged the tavern door open with his shoulder, the hinges let out a tired moan, echoing through the dim interior. Inside, the heat was faint, barely enough to chase the cold from their coats. The tavern had the unmistakable smell of old wood, fire smoke, and years-long loneliness. Dust lined the bar counter in a thin, even layer. The tables were arranged neatly, as if still waiting for the fishermen and travelers who once filled them. But it wasn't the dust or the smell that sent a chill up Logan's spine. It was the sound. A low hum. Subtle, metallic, vibrating somewhere beneath the floor. Shadow froze mid-step, his ears locked forward, body rigid. Logan watched the dog's muscles tighten under his fur. "What is it?" he murmured, setting Henry gently into a chair near the stove. Shadow lowered his head, sniffing the floorboards. Then he tapped his paw. Once, twice, then a third time, slow and deliberate. Logan stiffened. Shadow only ever tapped 3 times when something was wrong, when there was danger or something unknown he couldn't identify. Henry stirred at the sound, His voice came out cracked, barely above a whisper. I told you. Some things under this floor should stay buried. Logan straightened. What do you mean? What's under here? Henry didn't answer. His eyes drifted toward the center of the tavern floor, where a slightly warped board sat crooked compared to the others. His breath trembled. Not tonight, he murmured. Lord knows, it's already awake with the storm. Logan pulled a blanket tighter around the old man's shoulders and crouched in front of him. Henry, you're hurt. Just tell me what's down there. I need to know what we're walking into. Henry's eyelids fluttered. Secrets, he whispered. Ones my father kept, ones he begged me to protect. This place was built for more than drinks and stories. His voice faded. Please, don't open anything yet. Logan let out a slow exhale. He didn't like mysteries, not after what he'd seen overseas. Surprise was the enemy of survival. And this tavern, it breathed like something alive. Every gust of wind outside made the walls creak as if responding. He walked to the old wood stove and added 2 logs. Flames flickered to life, pushing back the cold. Shadow positioned himself beside Henry, lying down, but keeping his head up, watching every shadow that shifted along the walls. Logan moved around the tavern, examining photographs hanging askew on the walls. Fishermen holding giant trout, a family smiling in front of a newly built dock, men standing in front of the tavern decades ago. Most were faded, almost ghostly. One frame held a picture of Henry as a younger man, standing beside his father in front of the very same bar counter. Even then, Henry's smile looked tired. A sudden creak came from beneath the far corner of the room. Shadow shot up, teeth bared, a growl vibrating deep in his chest. Logan approached the corner cautiously. The hum beneath the floor grew stronger, a low metallic tremor that made the soles of his boots vibrate. He pressed his hand against the floorboard. It felt warm. Warm when everything else in the tavern was cold. Henry, Logan said, straightening. Is there something mechanical under here? A heater? A generator? Henry shivered violently, despite the blankets. No generator. No heater. Just the past. Logan didn't know what that meant, but the dread in Henry's tone was unmistakable. The wind howled outside, rattling the old windows. The lake groaned, a deep, resonant sound that seemed far too alive to be water shifting under ice. For a moment, Logan felt an old sensation creep up his spine, the one he used to feel right before all hell broke loose during combat missions. An instinct he had learned never to ignore. Shadow moved to Logan's side, nudging his leg, eyes steady and unblinking. Something was here. Something old. Something hidden. Logan walked back to Henry. Listen, he said gently. You're safe for now. We'll get you to a doctor in the morning. Henry shook his head weakly. No hospital, no police, just rest. I just need rest. Logan didn't argue. Not yet. Henry's pulse felt steady but fragile when Logan checked it. The man was hanging on by willpower alone. I'll stay close, Logan said. Shadow too. Henry's breathing softened. His eyes closed. But before he drifted off completely, he whispered one more sentence. So faint, Logan leaned close to hear it. Once you hear what's beneath, it'll never let you forget. The words sent a cold ripple down Logan's back. He sat near the stove while Shadow curled at his feet, staring into the dark. Outside, the lake moaned again, like something deep beneath the surface was waking. And somewhere under the tavern floor, something knocked. Once, twice, then a third time, slow, heavy, as if answering Shadow's signal. Logan looked down at his dog. Shadow didn't growl. He didn't bark. He simply stared back with steady eyes, as if saying, "This place is not what it seems." Logan sat near the dying fire long after Henry's breath eased into a shallow rhythm. The storm pressed against the tavern walls like a giant hand, making every window pane throb. The old building answered with creaks, groans, and that strange metallic hum beneath the floorboards, a sound that no amount of wind could explain. Shadow didn't sleep. He stayed close to Logan's leg, glancing between the hearth and the dark corners of the tavern like a soldier scanning for unseen threats. Logan reached down and brushed a hand gently along the dog's back. "You hear it too," he murmured. "Whatever it is, it's not just the wind." The fire flickered weakly, but gave off enough warmth to thaw the cold clinging to Logan's bones. Still, warmth didn't stop the nightmare waiting just below his eyelids. He leaned back, letting the chair creak as he closed his eyes. For a moment, the rain outside melted into the distant sound of gunfire, the sting of smoke from a blown-out corridor, the weight of thick dust choking the air. His pulse quickened. He could almost feel himself back inside the collapsed compound in Afghanistan, walls pressing in, the darkness thick enough to swallow breath. He remembered the screaming metal, the panic of not knowing which direction was out, and above all, the moment he thought he'd never see light again. Then, like an anchor thrown in chaos, Shadow had been there, digging, barking, scraping through debris until sunlight finally spilled across Logan's face. Logan's eyes snapped open, breath shaking. The tavern returned in an instant. Dusty chairs, old photos on the walls, the quiet hiss of logs settling in the stove. Shadow had moved closer during the panic. He rested his muzzle on Logan's knee, eyes steady, calm, patient. Logan placed a hand on the dog's head and exhaled. "I'm all right," he whispered, "just thinking too far back." Yet no matter how he tried to settle, he knew sleep wouldn't come tonight. Not with the old man's warning echoing through his mind, not with the strange warmth he'd felt under the floor, and not with the weight of a storm that felt like more than weather. Around 2 a.m, Henry stirred. Logan moved beside him, checking his breathing, adjusting the blanket. The old man's eyelids fluttered, revealing eyes cloudy with exhaustion, but sharp with memory. "Your dog," Henry rasped, voice thin as old paper. "He knows. Animals sense what we ignore." Logan frowned. "Sense what?" Henry's gaze drifted toward the warped section of the floorboards. The hum vibrated again, softer now, almost like a whisper traveling through wood. "My father built this place," Henry continued slowly. "But he didn't build it alone. The lake, the men, the tunnels, they were things he never wanted spoken of. Said the town wasn't ready to know he wheezed lightly, gripping Logan's wrist with surprising strength. "A fire took my brother years ago. After that, the secrets got heavier." His breath hitched. "He made me promise to guard them. Promise." Logan leaned in. "Guard what, Henry? What's under the tavern?" But the old man winced from pain, shaking his head. "Not yet," he whispered. "Not tonight." His hand loosened, falling limply against his chest. Logan eased him back into the chair as Henry drifted into uneasy sleep. Shadow rose, padded quietly across the floor, and sat before the crooked board again. His nose twitched. His fur bristled lightly along his spine. Without breaking eye contact with the floor, he tapped once, soft, controlled. Logan approached slowly. "What is it now, boy?" Shadow tapped again, this time a little harder, then a third time, sending a faint vibration through the wood. The hum from below responded, just one pulse, almost like a heartbeat echoing back. Logan straightened. His instincts were screaming now, an invisible prickle along his neck, the same feeling he'd had right before ambushes overseas. Something was under them. Something Henry feared badly enough to choose secrecy over safety. He knew he wouldn't get answers tonight. But he also knew he couldn't ignore what Shadow kept trying to show him. The tavern wasn't unsafe just because it was old. It felt unsafe because it was alive with something unseen. Unable to shake off the tension, Logan walked the perimeter of the room, studying old photos more closely. There was Henry's father again, posing beside a group of men wearing identical badges. Search and rescue volunteers by the look of it. In another photo, a wooden bell tower stood near the lake's edge, long since gone. Behind the bar, an old ledger lay open as if waiting for someone to read it. Logan skimmed the names. Dates from the late 1940s, notes about storms, missing fishermen, and something called Relay Point 17. His eyes narrowed. Wasn't the key Shadow found engraved with 17? Suddenly, the tavern shifted. Not creaked. Shifted. Logan froze. Shadow growled, deep and low. The floor seemed to give a gentle but undeniable shudder from beneath, the kind a structure makes when something heavy moves under it. But there was no basement. Henry had never mentioned one. Logan placed his palm flat on the warped plank. This time it wasn't warm. It pulsed faintly, like someone tapping back from the other side. He swallowed hard, rising to his feet. No basement, no generator, Logan muttered. Then what the hell is beneath us? Henry groaned softly in his sleep, as if the building's movement had reached him even in dreams. Shadow pressed against Logan's leg, steady but tense, a silent vow that he wasn't letting his handler face whatever was coming alone. Logan took one last look at the old man. "Rest, Henry," he whispered. "Tomorrow, I'm getting answers." Outside, the storm weakened, quieting into a soft patter. But the lake didn't quiet. It let out a long, low groan that rolled across the frozen surface like a warning. Logan knew one thing for certain. The tavern was hiding something, and whatever it wasn't asleep anymore. By dawn, the storm had thinned into a light drizzle that clung to the windows like sweat. The first gray glow of morning slipped between the clouds, revealing the lake in all its strange stillness. Blackwater Lake looked less like water and more like a sheet of dark metal, motionless, cold, unforgiving. Logan stood by the window, one hand wrapped around a mug of bitter coffee, the other resting absently on Shadow's head. The old Malinois had not left his side once through the night. He sat upright now, eyes locked on the lake, ears perked as if waiting for something to surface. Henry slept fitfully in the chair by the stove, mumbling once or twice in dreams that sounded a lot closer to memories than nightmares. Logan had barely slept himself. The floor's pulsing hum still lingered under his senses, like a warning trapped in stone. But morning light always had a way of dulling fear. Logan moved toward the door, hoping fresh air would clear his thoughts. He pushed it open and stepped out onto the porch. The cold hit immediately, sharp and honest, the kind of cold that kept a man awake. Shadow followed, nose lifted toward the lake. That's when Logan saw him. A figure stood at the far end of the old wooden dock, tall, coat dark, posture too still to be casual. The fog shifted around him, swallowing him up one moment and revealing him the next. Whoever he wasn't moving. He wasn't fishing. He wasn't enjoying the view. He was watching the tavern. Logan's pulse thumped once in warning. He stepped forward, careful not to make noise on the old porch planks. "Shadow," he whispered, and the dog's muscles tensed instantly. But before Logan could call out, the figure turned, slowly, deliberately, and then stepped backward into the fog. By the time Logan reached the bottom of the steps, the dock was empty. "Anyone out there?" he called. Only the lake answered, groaning under its thin layer of ice. Shadow growled, a deep rumble that vibrated through the cold air. Logan scanned the tree line, the fog, the water. Nothing. But he knew eyes when he felt them. Someone had been watching. Someone who knew the tavern, knew the lake, and definitely knew to leave before being approached. A sharp cough sounded behind him. Logan turned to see Henry standing in the doorway, leaning heavily on the frame. His face had lost color, and his hands trembled slightly. "There's someone out there?" Henry asked, voice gravelly. "Was," Logan replied. "Left before I got a good look." Henry looked toward the dock, his jaw tightening. "Fog likes to play tricks," he muttered. Logan crossed his arms. "That wasn't a trick." Henry didn't answer. Instead, he turned and shuffled back inside, his silence louder than anything he could have said. Around mid-morning, a rumble echoed from the road leading up the hill. Shadow snapped to "Tau, attention," tail rigid. Logan stepped outside again, readied for trouble. A sleek black truck rolled into view, shining clean despite the mud, polished chrome grille catching even the dull morning light. The kind of truck that didn't belong anywhere within 50 miles of this lake. It stopped beside the tavern. The door opened. A man stepped out, wearing a navy wool coat, his hair slicked back perfectly despite the weather. "Morning," the stranger called pleasantly, as if stopping by a grocery store instead of a half-collapsed lakeside tavern. "Beautiful place you've got here." Henry appeared behind Logan, his breath hitching the second he recognized the man. "Ryder Cole," he muttered under his breath. The CEO of North Frontier Energy smiled with the kind of polish that only money could afford. He extended his hand as he approached. "Mr. Dawson," Ryder said warmly. "Good to see you still standing." Henry didn't take the hand. "What do you want, Ryder?" Ryder's smile never faded, though his eyes sharpened. "Just came to talk. Rumor has it you had a rough night. Thought I'd check on you." Logan stepped slightly in front of Henry, body angled protectively. Shadow mirrored him, placing himself squarely between Ryder and the old man. Ryder raised his brows. "And you must be Logan Hale, former Navy SEAL, correct? Folks around here talk." Logan didn't answer. Ryder continued smoothly. "I'll get right to it. My company's been acquiring land around Blackwater Lake for a revitalization project. Eco-friendly development. Jobs, tourism, the works." He gestured toward the tavern. "This place sits right where our plans need access." Henry glared. "I told you already. This tavern isn't for sale." Ryder nodded sympathetically. "I understand nostalgia. But nostalgia doesn't pay property taxes, Henry. And with your health, you should consider letting someone else take care of this place." Logan felt Henry grip the back of his coat, fingers trembling but fierce. "Over my dead body," the old man snapped. Ryder sighed, the smile dimming only slightly. "This doesn't have to be difficult, but holding on to land you can't maintain isn't wise." Shadow growled. Ryder finally noticed, stepping back slightly. "Your dog's got a real temperament, doesn't he?" he said lightly. "He knows trouble when he sees it," Logan replied. For a moment, Ryder's polished mask slipped, just a crack, but enough for Logan to sense the edge beneath, the calculation, the ambition. Ryder adjusted his coat. "Think about my offer. I won't make it twice." He walked back toward his truck, then paused at the door. "And Logan? Careful around this lake. People disappear out here all the time." The truck drove off, leaving tire tracks that sliced through the mud like open wounds. Henry leaned heavily on Logan, breath shaking. "You don't know what he's after," he whispered. "What he'll do to get it." Logan looked toward the lake again. The fog had thickened, swirling like something alive. "Maybe not yet," he said, "but I plan to find out." Shadow stood beside him, watching the tree line, every muscle tight as wire, because something out there was watching them back. And for the first time since arriving at Blackwater Tavern, Logan felt the suspense sharpen into certainty. This wasn't just a tavern. It was a battleground waiting to be claimed. The morning after Ryder Cole's visit carried a tension that clung to the air like damp fog. Logan spent most of the day checking the tavern's perimeter, reinforcing loose window latches, and clearing debris from the porch. He wasn't sure what Ryder's next move would be, but he'd learned a long time ago that threats rarely came just once. Shadow followed him step for step, every sense sharpened. Henry spent the morning resting near the stove, his breath occasionally catching in his chest. The man looked older than he had the night before, as if the sight of Ryder had carved new years into him. But whenever Logan asked questions, Henry turned quiet, guarding his answers with the stubbornness of someone who had been hiding something his whole life. By early afternoon, the rain eased into a steady drizzle, soft enough that Logan cracked open the back door to let in some fresh air. That was when Shadow froze mid-step, ears upright, tail stiff, nose pressed to the old floorboards beneath the bar. "What is it now?" Logan asked, though he already recognized that posture. Shadow wasn't just noticing something, he was alerting. The dog crouched, sniffing the space intensely, then pawed at a thin board slightly more scratched than the rest. He pressed his paw once, then again, then a third time. "3 taps, Logan murmured. "All right, buddy. Show me." Shadow dug his nails into the seam of the plank, pulling back with calculated precision. Logan knelt beside him and pried it loose. Beneath the board sat a narrow compartment, dusty but intentional, cut evenly with careful craftsmanship. Inside lay a small rusted metal box, edges corroded from years of moisture. Logan lifted it out gently and set it on the bar. Shadow stood on his hind legs, front paws resting on the counter, as if he wanted to see the contents himself. Logan unlatched the old clasp. Inside were 3 items, each older than the tavern itself. A yellowed map of Blackwater Lake, a brass key engraved with 17. A faded rescue badge from the 1950s marked Blackwater Emergency Society. Logan's eyebrows lowered. Emergency Society? Henry didn't say anything about that. Shadow whined, pressing his nose to the map. The map was hand-drawn, fragile at the edges. Someone had marked several locations with red X's, one of them directly beneath the tavern. Another was circled on the northern shoreline. The number 17 appeared near a small inlet on the map. Henry coughed behind them. Logan turned to see the old man staring at the items with a look of grief mixed with fear. "You weren't supposed to find that," Henry whispered. "You hid it under the floor," Logan replied calmly. "Shadow just found what you wanted buried." Henry shook his head frantically. "I hid it to protect it, not to reveal it. That map, that key, they bring trouble every time they're touched." Logan set the items down gently. "Then tell me what they mean." Henry's hands trembled as he sank into a chair. "My father was part of a rescue network built around this lake. A secret one. Before radios were reliable. Before roads were safe. People went missing here all the time. Storms took fishermen. Ice swallowed travelers. The bell at Relay Point 17 called the volunteers." He paused, eyes drifting to the floor. But something happened. Something bad enough that the network was buried. Literally. Logan stepped closer. "What happened, Henry?" Henry's expression tightened. "I don't have the strength to relive it today." Before Logan could press further, Shadow snapped his head toward the cellar door. A deep growl rolled from his chest, low and warning. Logan's instincts flared. He crossed the room quietly, touching the door with the back of his hand. His fingers came away with a sticky, unmistakable scent. Gasoline. The hairs at the back of his neck rose. Someone had been here recently. Someone had stood right beside this door, close enough to leave the smell behind. He turned to Shadow. Track! The dog moved instantly, nose pressed against the base of the door, then across the floor and toward the back exit. Logan followed him through the kitchen and out into the cold. The ground was wet, but muddy footprints stretched from the cellar to the tree line, as if someone had bolted from the tavern. Shadow lunged toward the woods, barking sharply. Logan sprinted after him, but the drizzle turned the earth slick, making each step treacherous. Branches whipped across his jacket as he pushed into the brush. A shadow darted between the trees, fast, low, but unmistakably human. "Hey!" Logan shouted. "Stop!" The figure didn't stop. They vanished deeper into the forest, swallowed by fog and distance. By the time Logan reached the clearing, only the sound of rustling leaves remained. Shadow paced in circles, frustrated, nose to the ground. Whoever it was, they were long gone. Logan knelt and examined the tracks. The prints were heavy, rushed. Someone had fled. Someone who knew they shouldn't have been near the tavern. When he returned inside, Henry's face had lost what little color it had. "They're coming for it," he muttered. "I knew it. I knew Ryder wouldn't wait." Logan set a hand on his shoulder. "Ryder's not the type to get his hands dirty. But someone else came here. Someone working for him." Henry shook his head. "You don't understand. Ryder's family has been trying to wipe us out for decades. He won't stop until this place is his." Lightning flashed outside, a silent streak illuminating the lake for a split second. Logan didn't miss the symbolism. Something had been set in motion. The map, the key, the intruder. The storm outside had nothing on the one forming inside the tavern. He returned to the bar, placing the metal box on a clean towel. "Shadow found the first clue," he said quietly. "And whoever came last night was here to cover it up." Shadow sat beside him, chest rising and falling, with slow, guarded breaths. The lights flickered once, then went out. The tavern sank into darkness. Shadow growled, the kind of growl that meant danger was no longer coming. It was already here. Logan moved toward the stove for light when something outside snapped. A branch breaking under a heavy step. Then footsteps. Running. Leaving. Logan flung the door open, flashlight sweeping across the yard. But the figure was gone again. The intrusion wasn't an accident. It was a warning. The first real sign that the tavern's secrets were no longer content staying buried. And neither were the people trying to claim them. The storm rolled in just after midnight, fast, angry, pushing sheets of rain across Blackwater Lake. The tavern groaned under every gust as though the wind was trying to peel it open. Logan lay half awake on the couch, boots still on, Shadow curled tightly at his feet. Neither slept deeply anymore. Shadow lifted his head first. A sharp inhale, a growl rumbling low in his chest. Ears rigid, nose pointed toward the back wall. Logan opened his eyes instantly. "What is it, buddy?" Shadow didn't look away. A soft tap of his paw, once, twice, 3 times, barely audible over the storm. Danger. Logan rose slowly, his muscles responding with the muscle memory of a lifetime spent in war zones. He crossed the tavern, each step silent. The air shifted, just a hair warmer than before, and beneath it, something faint and acidic. Smoke. Logan's eyes snapped wide. He reached the rear door in 2 strides and pressed his hand near the seam. Heat pulsed against his palm. "Shadow, out front, now!" The dog bolted ahead, nails clicking against the wood floor as Logan yanked the door open. A wave of thick gray smoke rolled inside like an invading tide. Outside, flames licked up the back wall, already crawling toward the roofline. Henry's bedroom was just above that wall. Logan sprinted down the hall, heart slamming against his ribs. Shadow barked sharply behind him, echoing the urgency. Logan burst into Henry's room and found the old man slumped in bed, coughing weakly, eyes glassy with shock. "Henry, stay with me!" He grabbed the blanket and wrapped it around Henry's shoulders, pulling him upright. Henry wheezed, one hand clutching Logan's arm. "It's them! They came back! No time! Let's move!" Logan lifted him with careful precision, a fireman's carry modified by years of battlefield training. He guided Henry through the smothering haze choking the hallway. Shadow ran ahead, barking directions, acting as both scout and guardian. When they reached the main room, a loud crack split the air, part of the rafters giving way. Embers rained from above. Shadow shoved Logan's leg with his head, urging him faster. Logan pushed through the front door just seconds before the rear wall ignited in a spray of sparks. Cold rain hit them like a slap. Logan laid Henry gently on the porch, shielding him from the falling debris. Shadow stood beside them, one paw lifted, burned, but he made no sound. He just stared at the fire, the fury glowing in his eyes. Logan swept his gaze around the property, scanning the darkness beyond the porch light. Someone had done this. Someone had stood back here with gasoline and a fuse and tried to end everything. He spotted something glimmering in the mud. A small black cylinder, half melted. He crouched, picked it up, wiped away soot. A fuse, industrial grade, stamped with a logo, North Frontier Energy, Ryder Coles Company. Logan clenched his jaw. The fuse bent slightly under the pressure of his grip. "Ryder," he whispered. Henry wheezed again. Logan knelt beside him. "They tried to finish us," Henry said weakly, "just like before, when my brother died." Logan looked sharply at him. "You need to tell me everything. Now isn't the time for half-truths." Henry coughed, eyes watering from smoke and wind. "The tavern, the bell, the tunnels, it's all connected. They want what's underneath. What my father hid. What's underneath?" Henry didn't answer. His breath rattled low in his chest, exhaustion overtaking him. Shadow pressed himself against Henry's side, offering warmth. Logan stroked the dog's fur, noticing the scorched patch along his shoulder. "You saved him," Logan whispered. "You saved both of us." Shadow licked Henry's hand, but his eyes stayed locked on the burning wall, memorizing, understanding, preparing. They watched silently as flames devoured the back of the tavern. Logan knew the fire department was too far away and too slow to matter. This wasn't about destroying a building. This was a message, an attempt to frighten Henry into giving up whatever he had protected for decades. The roof cracked again, collapsing inward with a heavy crash. Sparks flew into the storm like angry fireflies. Logan shielded Henry's face, though the old man seemed less afraid of the flames than of what they meant. "It's starting again," Henry mumbled. "The fight my father warned me about." "Henry," Logan said firmly, "you're not fighting it alone." Henry gripped his arm, surprising him with strength. "Logan, if they knew you were here, if they knew you saved me, they'll come for you next." "Let them," Logan said, voice steady. "I'm not easy to take." Shadow barked once, sharp, resolute. Henry's hand trembled. "Find the tunnel. Follow the key." Then he coughed violently, his breath thinning. Logan lifted him gently. "We need to get you inside what's left of the tavern. I'll treat your lungs and your leg." Henry's eyes fluttered. "The map, the bell, all of it. Don't let them take it." "We won't," Logan promised. Shadow nuzzled Henry's shoulder, then limped toward the front door, signaling it was safe to enter the undamaged portion of the tavern. Logan carried Henry inside, laying him carefully beside the stove. He checked the man's pulse, weak but present. Henry's breathing was strained, but he managed a faint, grateful smile. "You're a good man, Logan Hale," he whispered. "Maybe better than you know." Logan didn't answer. His eyes drifted to the melted fuse in his hand, then to Shadow's burned paw. Ryder had crossed a line. Outside, the fire hissed under the rain, dying down but leaving behind charred beams and blackened memories. The tavern had survived, but barely. Shadow rested his head on Logan's knee, eyes half closed, exhausted from the smoke and adrenaline. Logan stroked him gently. "Rest, boy," he whispered. "We'll deal with this tomorrow." But inside, Logan knew the truth. Tomorrow wouldn't be calmer. Tomorrow would be war. Ryder had fired the first shot. Logan Hale and Shadow would decide the last. Morning came slowly, as though the sky itself hesitated to pull back the curtain on what remained of the night before. The air outside the tavern carried the sour smell of wet ash, drifting with every cold gust across Blackwater Lake. A thin layer of smoke clung to the pines like a ghost refusing to leave. Inside, the tavern was too quiet. Logan knelt beside Henry Dawson, who lay wrapped in blankets near the wood stove. The old man's breathing was shallow, thin, rattling pulls of air that reminded Logan of battlefield triage, of soldiers holding on by threads. Shadow curled against Henry's uninjured side, his burned paw tucked beneath him, refusing to rest elsewhere. Logan held Henry's wrist gently, counting the pulse he already knew was fading. "You lost a lot of air last night," Logan said softly, trying to keep his voice steady. "But we're going to get you help." Henry smiled faintly at the ceiling. "Help, son. I've been waiting my whole life for this moment, for it to end with the right man standing here." "Don't talk like that," Logan murmured. "You're not done yet." Henry shook his head weakly. "My father used to say, 'Every man gets one true fight.' Mine's been going on since 1947. Too long for these old bones." Logan looked toward the door. "Sheriff Ward should be here any minute. Dr. Graham, too, just hold on." Henry exhaled in a trembling sigh. "Logan, listen." Shadow lifted his head, ears twitching, sensing the shift in Henry's voice. He leaned closer, resting his chin gently on Henry's chest. Henry lifted a trembling hand and placed it against Shadow's fur. "You're a good dog," he whispered. "You remind me of my brother's old shepherd. Loyal to the end." Shadow's eyes softened, full of a quiet understanding only dogs seem to possess. Henry's gaze returned to Logan. "That tunnel, down there beneath the tavern, it saved lives once. My father built it with a group of volunteers, a rescue network for the lake before radios were reliable. The bell guided them home in storms, accidents, drownings." His breath hitched. Logan steadied him with a hand on his shoulder. "But men like Ryder only see land and money," Henry continued. "They don't see souls. They don't see history." Logan felt anger burn low and steady in his chest. "I'll protect what your family started. I promise you that." Henry's eyes brightened for a moment, gratitude flickering like the last ember in a dying fire. "I know you will. That's why I'm not afraid." A soft knock echoed through the front of the tavern. The door opened, and Sheriff Emily Ward stepped inside, hat in hand, her uniform damp from the lingering drizzle. Her dark hair framed eyes filled with concern. "Logan," she said quietly, "I came as soon as I heard. How bad?" Logan didn't have to answer. She saw the truth on Henry's face. She approached and knelt beside him, placing a gentle hand over his. "Henry," she whispered, "I'm here." Henry opened his eyes, recognizing her through the haze. "Emily Ward, still standing watch, just like your father." She blinked away sudden moisture. "Always." Henry's breathing slowed further, each inhale shallow, each exhale a struggle. Emily, Logan. Someone tried to burn this tavern down. You both know who. But you must look past Ryder. There are others. People with papers, signatures, ways of hiding theft behind laws. We'll handle it, Emily said firmly. Henry's hand trembled. Promise me, you'll protect the tunnel. Protect the bell. It saved us once. Then Henry's voice faded into a whisper. It'll save you too. His head rested back. His chest lifted once, twice, then fell still. Shadow let out a soft, mournful whine, a sound that seemed to fold into the silence like a wound closing slowly. The dog nudged Henry's arm gently, refusing to believe the stillness. Emily bowed her head. Logan sat back on his heels, staring at Henry's peaceful face. Something inside him tightened, the kind of ache he knew too well, the ache of losing someone who trusted him. He reached out and placed his hand on Shadow's back. It's okay, boy, he whispered. He's gone home. But Shadow didn't move. He pressed himself closer to Henry's side, as though his warmth might bring the old man back. Logan didn't force him away. He knew grief in animals ran deeper than people often realized. Emily placed a hand on Logan's shoulder. He was tough, and he cared about this place more than anyone. Logan nodded slowly. He shouldn't have died with fear in his voice. Emily's jaw tightened. We'll make sure his death isn't the end of this fight. I swear it. Logan looked toward the smoke-stained back wall of the tavern. The scent of burned wood mixed with cold lake air seeped under the doors. Henry had carried fear and secrets for decades. He had died with both on his lips. Logan stood, the fuse from the fire still tucked in his pocket, a reminder of the enemy standing in the shadows. Shadow finally rose, resting his head against Logan's leg, tail still, body heavy with mourning. Logan knelt and held the dog close. We aren't backing down, he whispered. He trusted us. We're finishing this. As Emily prepared to radio the doctor and county office, Logan walked toward the charred wall. The rain had nearly stopped, leaving behind only dripping eaves and a faint smell of smoke. Henry Dawson was gone. But his unfinished war was now in Logan's hands, and Shadow stood beside him, ready to fight it. Together, they stared at the burned remains of the tavern's rear wall. The silence around them wasn't empty. It was the kind of silence that comes right before something breaks open. A silence waiting for truth. A silence waiting for justice. A silence waiting for Logan Hale. The storm finally broke at midday, leaving behind a wet, shimmering stillness that clung to Blackwater Lake like a second skin. Mist curled between the pines, sliding low across the ground, as if trying to hide what the night had revealed. Logan stepped onto the porch, boots sinking into the damp earth, Shadow limping softly behind him. The dog's bandaged paw didn't stop him from staying close, closer than ever since Henry's passing. The tavern felt different now, lighter in some places, heavier in others. Loss changes the weight of a building. It settles in the beams, the floorboards, the silence. Logan inhaled deeply, letting the cool air clear the smoke still lingering in his lungs. Henry's final words played on repeat in his mind. Protect the tunnel. Follow the key. It saved us once. It'll save you too. Shadow nudged his hand, sensing the shift inside him, focus sharpening, grief turning to purpose. Logan rested a hand on the dog's head. Let's find what he meant. Inside, the tavern was dim but calm. Rain had washed the soot from the windows, leaving streaks of clean glass where the storm had wiped away the chaos of the night before. Logan moved across the main room slowly, studying every angle, listening. Shadow stopped near the bar. His ears twitched. A soft huff escaped him. Then tap, 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 Logan froze. You hear it too, don't you? Shadow stepped back, nose pointed toward the floor. Logan knelt and slid his hand across the wooden planks. One sounded hollow. Another felt slightly warmer than the rest, as if something beneath had held heat for decades. He retrieved the engraved key from his pocket, the one Shadow had uncovered from the metal box days earlier. The number 17 gleamed faintly in the dusty afternoon light. Shadow nudged the board again. Logan slipped his fingers beneath its edge. The plank lifted. Underneath lay a square of old reinforced plywood, sealed with rusted nails that had nearly turned to dust. Logan pried them loose gently. As the last one came free, cold air surged upward, untouched for decades, carrying the scent of cedar, oil, and forgotten time. A metal ring gleamed at the center of the panel. Found you. Logan pulled. The hatch opened with a long, aching groan, as if the tavern itself protested the disturbance after so many silent years. Shadow peered over the edge, tail stiff but unafraid. A narrow staircase descended into pure darkness. Logan clicked on his flashlight. Stay behind me, Shadow. They stepped into the underground. The wooden stairs creaked softly under their weight. Dust motes drifted in the beam of Logan's light, swirling like tiny ghosts of the tavern's past. The deeper they went, the cooler the air became, pressing against their skin like a breath held too long. At the bottom, the stairs opened into a narrow corridor framed with thick beams. Posters and faded notices lined the walls. Lake safety guidelines, missing persons reports from the late 1940s, hand-drawn rescue maps. Every inch felt frozen in a moment long before Logan or Shadow were born. This place, Logan whispered. It's a time capsule. Shadow trotted ahead, sniffing the ground, leaving small prints in the dust. His posture shifted, less cautious, more pulled by instinct. Logan trusted that instinct more than any map. The corridor ended at a heavy steel door. Its hinges rusted, but the metal still strong. A small keyhole sat beneath a faded brass plate reading, Blackwater Rescue Network, 1947. Logan lifted the key. It slid in as if it belonged there. He turned it. The lock clicked, smooth, perfect. A sound that hadn't been heard in decades. The door swung open. Inside the chamber, rows of rescue equipment lay preserved like relics in a forgotten museum. Wooden crates marked first aid. Old radio transmitters coated in dust. Weathered maps with hand-drawn notations. Shelves of lanterns and coiled ropes. Shadow stopped halfway in, staring at something at the far end. A large object draped in canvas. Logan approached and pulled the cover back. A bronze bell emerged from beneath the dust and cloth. A massive, beautifully crafted piece with carved lake patterns around its rim. The metal gleamed faintly in the flashlight beam despite its age. Blackwater Bell, Logan murmured. So it's real. Shadow barked once, the sound echoing off the stone walls. The dog pawed gently at the floor beneath the bell, then looked up at Logan. You think there's more? Logan knelt and examined the base. He found small loops welded onto the sides, handles used to lower it, raise it, anchor it. This wasn't a decorative piece, it was the heart of a rescue system. Henry's father, his brother, the volunteers. This bell had saved countless lives. Logan swallowed, feeling the weight of history pressing into his chest. He traced the engraved initials along the rim. BRN. Blackwater Rescue Network, 1947. Shadow's head snapped toward the corridor. Logan raised his flashlight. The air shifted again, soft, subtle, like a quiet inhale. Then a sound rose from deep within the chamber walls. Not metal, not animals, not the wind. A low hum, deep, resonant, almost like a distant echo of the bell itself. Shadow's body stiffened, tail straight, ears forward. He didn't bark this time. He simply listened. Logan closed his eyes, concentrating. The hum pulsed again, 3 times. Slow, measured. "It's answering something," Logan whispered. "Something out there." Shadow turned and nudged Logan's leg urgently, then ran toward the corridor, pausing only to look back. "All right," Logan said. "Show me." Together they retraced their steps, climbing toward the tavern above. As they emerged into the main room, Logan paused, letting his eyes adjust. A thin draft whispered across the floorboards. A reminder. The tavern wasn't just a building. It wasn't just history. It was a map, a message, constructed by people who feared their work would be erased. And now Ryder Cole was trying to finish the job those long-ago enemies had started. Logan closed the hatch gently. Shadow leaned against his leg, letting out a soft breath. "We found the first piece," Logan said quietly. "Whatever Ryder is after, we're not letting him have it." Shadow's head lifted. 3 taps of his paw. Steady, focused, ready. Logan stared at the burned rear wall of the tavern, the ash still clinging to the edges of the broken boards. "Henry," he whispered, "we're just getting started." And for the first time since the fire, the tavern didn't feel empty. It felt awake. Logan stood in the center of the quiet room, feeling Shadow lean against his leg, both of them listening to the soft creaks moving through the beams overhead. The tavern had a pulse now, steady, rhythmic, almost guiding, as if Henry's spirit still wandered between the walls, urging them deeper into the mystery. But the moment of calm didn't last. A low rumble outside broke the silence, tires grinding through wet gravel. Logan stiffened instantly. Shadow's ears snapped forward, alert. The dog stepped toward the door, shoulders squared, growling under his breath. A black SUV pulled up to the porch, gleaming too clean against the soot-darkened tavern. The engine cut off. A figure stepped out with an umbrella, adjusting the cuffs of a perfectly pressed coat. Ryder Cole. Logan felt the tension coil in his muscles like a familiar weapon being loaded. Shadow moved to his side, fur raised, ready but controlled. Ryder climbed the steps with a faint smirk. "You look tired, Logan. Rough night?" Logan stepped between Ryder and the door. "Get off my porch." Ryder lifted his eyebrows as though amused. "Your porch? Interesting choice of words for a man with no legal claim." Logan stayed silent. Ryder continued, brushing a fleck of imaginary dust from his sleeve. "Let's not waste time. I'm here because you've complicated things. Henry's death changes the situation." Shadow growled, the low rumble vibrating through the boards beneath them. Ryder eyed the dog with a dismissive glance. "Control your animal, Hale." "He's calmer than I am," Logan replied. Ryder shifted his weight, unfazed. "North Frontier Energy has deep property investments in this region. Henry was an obstacle. But now, the transfer of the tavern must go through the courts. And I assure you, my lawyers are far more prepared than anything the county can offer." Logan felt the heat rise in his chest. "Henry didn't owe you a damn thing." Ryder held up a folder. "Actually, he did. These documents prove he defaulted on several agreements going back decades, all of which transfer to me. And if you think this old building will stand in the way of progress, well, think again." Logan stepped closer. "You tried to burn it down." Ryder's smile thinned. "Prove it." Shadow's growl deepened, becoming sharper, more pointed. Logan placed a steadying hand on the dog's neck. "Get off the property," Logan said quietly. "Now." Ryder leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. "You're not a SEAL anymore, Hale. You're just a man with a dog. And both of you are in my way." Logan's eyes narrowed. "I'm still the wrong man to threaten," Ryder gave a low laugh. 48 hours. That's how long you have before demolition begins. Unless you find something miraculous. He turned toward the SUV, pausing only to add, though in my experience, miracles burn just as easily as old taverns. He drove away, leaving deep tracks in the mud, like scars across the property. Logan remained still long after the SUV disappeared. Shadow nudged his hand, ears low, sensing the shift from anger to deeper, colder resolve. Inside the tavern, Logan spread Ryder's folder across the bar. Half the documents were forgeries. The dates didn't line up. The signatures had different stroke angles. Ryder thought intimidation and paperwork would be enough. He was wrong. Shadow padded toward the window, staring out toward the lake. He whined softly, looking back at Logan with an expression that said, "Be ready." As Logan sat down to examine the paperwork further, Shadow's ears jerked upward again. A sound. A faint crunch outside. Feet on gravel. Shadow spun around, hackles raised, and sprinted toward the door. "Shadow!" Logan shot up, grabbing a flashlight and rushing after him. Outside, the fog was thickening again, curling low, masking every shape. Shadow barreled toward the dock, nose to the ground, body tense. Logan followed, scanning the fog. "What do you see, boy?" Shadow suddenly stopped, pawing at something on the ground near the waterline. A black USB drive. Logan picked it up, turning it over in his fingers. No markings. Slightly damp, but intact. Shadow whined again, nudging Logan's knee urgently. Back inside, Logan plugged the drive into Henry's old laptop. A single file appeared. Audio. Untitled. He clicked play. Static. Voices. Muffled. Men whispering. Then clear words. "Tonight's job failed. Fire didn't take. They survived. Boss says try again. The SEALs interfering. We handle it tomorrow. No witnesses." Logan's jaw locked. Shadow paced beside him, barking once, sharp, furious. The cursor blinked on the screen, mocking the danger that hovered just beyond the lake's edge. A knock hit the door, fast, hurried. Logan rose instantly, hand instinctively reaching for where a sidearm would have been in another life. Sheriff Emily Ward entered, breathless, damp from the mist. "Logan, we've got trouble." "You're late to that conclusion." Emily shook her head. "This is worse. Ryder's lawyers filed an emergency injunction with the county. They're arguing the tavern is unsafe and must be seized by morning." Shadow barked sharply, circling Logan, tail straight. Emily continued, anger flashing in her eyes. "Unless you have proof this place belongs to Henry's family, real proof we're out of time." Logan looked toward the hatch under the floor, then toward the lake beyond the window, and then at Shadow, those steady amber eyes asking, "Are you ready? Because everything is about to change." Logan nodded slowly. "Emily, we found something under the floor." Shadow tapped his paw 3 times, the signal that always meant the same thing. "Go deeper," Logan exhaled, steady and certain. "Tomorrow, I'm diving under the ice." Emily stared at him. "Logan, it's dangerous. Freezing. You don't know what's down there." Logan looked at the USB drive, at the burned wall, at Henry's empty chair. "I know Ryder wants to erase something." He rested a hand on Shadow's neck, feeling the dog's silent loyalty steady him. "And we're going to find what he's afraid of." Shadow pressed into him, ready. The tavern groaned softly, the beams settling in the rising wind, as if bracing for the storm that had nothing to do with the weather. Logan closed the laptop gently. Time to finish what Henry started. Shadow's eyes gleamed. In them, Logan saw not just a partner, but a promise, and the next battle waiting beneath the ice. Dawn came with a brittle stillness, the kind only deep winter knows. Blackwater Lake lay frozen under a sheet of pale blue glass, its surface catching the early light, like a giant mirror left behind by the cold. A thin mist curled over it, swirling in slow movements that made the lake look alive, breathing, waiting. Logan stood at the edge of the old dock, tying the final knot on the weighted line around his waist. The old diving suit, Henry's, smelled faintly of oil and age, the canvas stiff but surprisingly intact. Shadow paced beside him, leaving small prints on the frost-crusted boards. Every few steps he paused to stare out over the ice, ears pitched forward, tail low and bristled. Logan knelt and placed a hand on the dog's chest. "I know," he whispered. "I feel it too." Shadow pressed his forehead into Logan's shoulder, a gesture that carried more weight than words. Emily Ward watched from the shoreline, her breath clouding the air. "Logan, I need to say this plainly. This is dangerous. The ice is thin near the pier. We don't know what's down there." Logan tested the line again. Henry marked the second chamber beneath this lake. If the charter's there, that's our proof. Without it, Ryder wins. Emily crossed her arms tightly against the cold. "Just give me something, anything, to help if things go wrong." Logan nodded toward Shadow. "He's my backup." Shadow barked once, firm like agreement. Emily managed a strained smile. "Then you're in good hands." Logan stepped onto the ice. It groaned beneath his boots, a long, low moan that echoed across the lake. He moved carefully, letting his weight settle evenly. Shadow followed, stepping lightly behind him, eyes scanning every ripple, every shadow beneath the surface. When they reached the marked point, an X on the map carved beneath the old dock, Logan knelt and began chipping through the ice with Henry's old pickaxe. Each strike rang like a muted bell. Shards scattered across the frozen surface. A small crack formed, then another. Shadow hovered close, tail stiff, whining softly. A final strike broke through. Dark water pulsed beneath the opening, cold, still, merciless. Emily called from shore. "Logan, rope check!" He tugged the line twice. It held firm. "Ready." Shadow nudged his leg sharply, as if to say, "Be careful." Logan knelt and rested his forehead briefly against Shadow's. "Guard the line. No one touches it but me." Shadow's growl was low, certain, deadly calm. Then Logan lowered himself into the water. The cold hit like a fist, hard, stunning, but the suit held. Only the shock in his lungs reminded him how close death was. He forced himself to breathe slowly through the regulator. The water was darker than he expected, thick with silt drifting like ash. He clicked on his flashlight. A beam of yellow sliced the pool. Lake floor revealed itself in slow pieces, rocks covered in winter moss, sunken logs, remnants of old traps. Logan swam deeper, following the map's direction through the icy silence. The rope brushed against his shoulder, a constant lifeline. 10 feet. 15. Then something gleamed faintly ahead. A structure. A low stone arch half swallowed by mud, built decades ago. Carved across its top was a pattern of waves, the same mark found on the bell in the bunker. Logan's pulse quickened. He angled the light downward. There. A second bell chamber. This one smaller, built beneath the lake, hidden completely from the world above. A sealed metal box lay at its base, wedged between stones and rusted iron beams. He kicked downward, grabbing the edge. The metal resisted at first, fused by time, but Logan was stronger. He pried it free. Inside the suit, his heart hammered with hope. "The charter, please let it be here." Shadow's bark suddenly vibrated faintly down the rope, urgent, frantic. Logan's grip tightened. Something was wrong. He tucked the metal box under his arm and swam upward as fast as he could safely ascend. Light grew stronger. The rope pulled taut. Then, a violent jerk. Someone had grabbed the line. Logan froze underwater. Shadow's barks became sharper, angrier, echoing across the lake's surface. Logan could hear them even through the water, a sound he had learned to recognize anywhere. A battle cry. He kicked harder, cutting through the freezing darkness. As he neared the opening in the ice, he saw movement. Shadows, thrashing, struggling. A man's hand grabbed the rope again. Logan broke the surface. Shadow slammed into the intruder, a tall man in dark tactical clothing, knocking him sideways. The man roared, striking Shadow with his elbow. But the dog held on, teeth flashing, guarding the rope with every ounce of strength. "Shadow!" Logan shouted, pulling himself onto the ice. The intruder kicked the dog hard. Too hard. Shadow yelped. Rage ignited inside Logan, hot and blinding. He lunged forward, ice cracking under his weight, and tackled the man to the ground. They slid across the slick surface, fists striking, boots scraping. The intruder swung a small blade. Logan blocked it with the metal box, the clang echoing across the lake. Emily's voice rang out from shore. "Freeze! Sheriff's Department!" The intruder bolted toward the trees, slipping but never falling, disappearing into the fog like a ghost. Logan made to pursue, but Shadow let out a low whine, collapsing onto the ice. Everything stopped. Logan slid to him instantly, cradling the dog's head. Shadow's shoulder was bleeding, slashed by the intruder's blade. "You're okay," Logan whispered, voice breaking. "You're okay, buddy. I've got you." Shadow licked his hand weakly, eyes glassy but still alert. Emily reached them, dropping her weapon to kneel beside the dog. "He'll make it. We'll get him stitched up." Logan held the metal box tightly against his chest. That man. He wasn't working alone. Emily nodded grimly. "Ryder's head of security. I recognize the build." Logan stood slowly, lifting Shadow carefully into his arms. "And Ryder just declared war." Emily's eyes shifted to the metal box. "Did you find it?" Logan opened the lid with shaking hands. Inside were waterproof documents, yellowed but intact. Signatures, maps, the Blackwater Charter. Henry's father's signature gleamed at the top. Emily exhaled, breath fogging in the cold air. "Logan, this is it. This proves the lake and tavern belong to the community forever." Shadow nudged Logan's chin softly, as if to remind him, "You didn't do this alone." Logan held the dog close, his breath steaming in the frozen air. "We're taking this to the courthouse," he whispered, "and we're ending this." Shadow's tail thumped weakly. The lake behind them shifted with a soft groan, as though something deep beneath acknowledged the truth finally rising to the surface. The fight wasn't over. But for the first time, Logan felt the tide turning. Snow fell in slow, deliberate flakes the morning of the hearing, thick enough to soften the world, thin enough to see the courthouse rising at the top of Main Street, like a gray stone sentinel. People gathered outside in small clusters, their breath drifting into the cold air as murmurs spread through the crowd. Logan stepped out of Emily Ward's patrol SUV, with Shadow at his side. The Malinois walked slower than usual, bandaged shoulder held stiffly, but his eyes burned with alert purpose. Even injured, he moved like a soldier who refused to leave his post. Emily adjusted her coat, her jaw set. Ryder brought a full legal team. Half the county office is inside already. Logan nodded, gripping the metal lockbox tightly under one arm. "Then let's give them something worth showing up for." As they climbed the courthouse steps, Shadow paused, his eyes fixed on the tall glass doors. Inside, Ryder Cole stood just beyond them, immaculate in a charcoal suit, surrounded by 3 attorneys. He didn't smile this time. His face held a calm, poised confidence that made the air around him feel colder than the snow. The doors opened with a hollow echo. Ryder stepped forward. "Mr. Hale, Sheriff Ward, quite a turnout for a simple property ruling." Emily's eyes hardened. "Cut the theatrics, Ryder." Ryder ignored her, directing his attention to Shadow. "You brought the dog?" "Brave. Unwise, but brave." Logan stepped between Ryder and Shadow. "He stays." Ryder leaned in slightly. "You're betting your future on scraps of old paper and a rusty bell. You should have taken my offer." Logan didn't blink. "I don't take deals with men who try to burn houses down." For the first time, Ryder's expression flickered with anger before settling back into a mask of cool arrogance. "We'll see what holds up in court." They entered the courtroom. The large chamber was filled. Townsfolk, reporters, lawyers, even two state archivists seated with folders on their laps. Judge Miriam Clay presided from the bench, her silver hair tied neatly, her gaze sharp enough to cut stone. "All rise." Everyone stood as she took her seat. She adjusted her glasses and looked directly at Ryder first. "Mr. Cole, you may present your claim." Ryder rose smoothly. "Your Honor, North Frontier Energy has maintained a legal claim on this property for 3 years. We have documentation showing Mr. Dawson failed to meet the renewal terms." He laid out papers across the table, sliding them toward the judge. "Thus transferring rights to my company under Montana statute." Emily leaned toward Logan and whispered, "Watch his left hand. He's signaling his attorney." "And prior agreements signed by Henry Dawson in the late 80s, Ryder continued, "further validate our position." Judge Clay examined the documents, expression neutral. "Mr. Hale," she said at last, "Sheriff Ward tells me you possess evidence that challenges the ownership claim." Logan rose, lifting the metal box. "Yes, Your Honor." He placed the box on the table, opened it, and spread the contents across the surface. Carefully preserved maps, signed ledgers, dated seals, and the original Blackwater Charter. These were found in a sealed rescue chamber beneath the tavern. The documents show that the tavern and surrounding land were placed under the Blackwater Rescue Trust in 1947. It was meant to remain community-owned forever. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Ryder's lead attorney scoffed. "A convenient story, Mr. Hale, but old papers don't outweigh documented debt agreements." Emily stepped forward. "There's more." Logan opened a smaller compartment in the box and retrieved the USB drive. "This contains audio of Ryder's men discussing arson, planning it, and mentioning him by name as the one who ordered the job." Ryder's face tightened. His attorney interjected. "Objection. Illegally obtained. Unverifiable. It came from the man who attacked Logan on the lake," Emily said sharply. "Who escaped from a crime scene. Who carries credentials linking him to Ryder's private security team." The judge raised her hand. "Enough. I will review the audio myself. In the meantime, there remains one piece of evidence I find unusual." Her gaze shifted to Logan. "You claim there is a bell that matches the original trust recording." Logan nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." "Bring it forward." Emily stepped out briefly and returned with the Blackwater bell resting on a padded dolly. The bell's bronze surface gleamed under the courtroom lights, reflecting rows of anxious faces. The judge leaned closer. "HLT 1947, she read aloud. "The trust's founding year." She looked up. "Do you have the recording referenced in these documents?" Emily pressed play on the audio device. The courtroom filled with the crackling warmth of a long-ago voice. Henry Dawson's father reading the charter. "If law bends to greed, the bell shall speak for the people." Logan lifted a small wooden mallet, waiting for the judge's nod. "Go ahead," she said. Logan struck the bell. The sound rolled through the courtroom, deep, resonant, unmistakably the same bell heard in the recording. Several people gasped softly. Even Ryder seemed to lose color. The judge sat very still. Then she spoke. This bell, the charter, and the evidence of arson paint a clear picture. The Blackwater Rescue Trust never transferred ownership. The land and tavern remain protected under state and federal preservation laws. Ryder's attorney stood abruptly. Your Honor. Sit down, she said, voice sharp. Mr. Cole, your claims are dismissed. Furthermore, given the audio evidence and Sheriff Ward's testimony, an investigation into arson and attempted fraud will proceed immediately. Ryder finally snapped. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Judge Clay glared down at him. I know exactly who I am dealing with, and this court will not be intimidated. Two deputies stepped forward as Ryder tried to protest, placing him in custody pending further investigation. Shadow rose beside Logan, tail slowly wagging, steady, controlled, satisfied. The gavel fell. Blackwater Tavern will remain in community stewardship. Case closed. Cheers erupted throughout the courtroom. Some cried. Some embraced. Emily squeezed Logan's shoulder. You did it. No, Logan said, looking down at Shadow. We did. Shadow pressed against him, amber eyes bright, bandaged shoulder trembling with pride. The courtroom emptied slowly, people approaching to shake Logan's hand, to thank Shadow, to speak Henry's name with respect. Lanterns flickered to life outside as the winter sun dipped low. Logan paused on the courthouse steps, watching the lights reflect on the snow-covered street. For the first time in a long time, something warm settled in his chest. Not victory, not relief, but belonging. Shadow nudged him gently, and Logan whispered, Come on, buddy, let's go home. Blackwater Tavern was waiting, and Logan whispered, Come on, buddy, let's go home. Blackwater Tavern was waiting. The drive back through the winding mountain road felt different this time. Lighter, calmer, as if the weight that had been crushing Logan's chest since the fire had finally lifted. Snowflakes drifted across the windshield in soft, lazy arcs. Shadow lay in the back seat, head resting on a folded blanket Emily had given him, eyes half closed but alert enough to raise a brow every time the truck rounded a bend. The tavern appeared through the trees like a beacon. Lanterns hung from the porch posts, glowing warm against the winter dusk. A small crowd gathered outside. Neighbors, volunteers, even the pastor from town, holding hot drinks, carrying toolboxes, talking quietly as if the old tavern were a fragile patient waking from surgery. When Logan stepped out of the truck, people turned. Hope lit their faces. Shadow rose slowly, carefully placing weight on his injured shoulder. As soon as he hopped out of the truck, several kids knelt to greet him, speaking softly, touching his fur with gentle awe. Shadow accepted their affection with dignified patience, tail swaying like a slow metronome. Logan? Someone called. It was Lila Harper, owner of the local hardware store. She jogged across the snow with a scarf wrapped twice around her neck. We started without you. I hope that's all right. You didn't have to do any of this, Logan said. She smiled. Yes, we did. Henry helped this town for decades, and now you're helping him finish what he started. Behind her, another man waved, then someone else, and another. People brought paint, lumber, brushes, nails. Someone had already swept away the burned debris. The tavern looked wounded but standing, like a fighter who refused to stay down. Logan swallowed hard, overwhelmed by the sight. Emily approached with a clipboard, cheeks pink from the cold. We organized shifts. Folks will work in teams, carpenters, painters, electricians. You just tell us what you need. Logan tried to speak but felt his voice tighten. Shadow pressed against his leg, as if sensing the emotion rising. Thank you, Logan finally managed. All of you. A cheer rose from the group, And so the rebuilding began. For days the tavern buzzed like a hive. Sunlight glinted off newly installed windows. Fresh boards replaced the charred ones. Volunteers hammered and sanded and painted, while others cleared brush or repaired the dock. Every morning the scent of coffee drifted from a large pot someone kept full on an outdoor burner. Logan worked beside them without pause, hauling lumber, repairing beams, tightening bolts on the roof braces. Shadow supervised from below, occasionally barking sharp, approving commands like a construction foreman with 4 paws. More than once, people laughed and said, "That dog's got better instincts than most of us." During lunch breaks, Logan sat on the steps with Shadow, eating sandwiches brought by grateful townsfolk. Kids gathered around him, eager to hear stories of rescue missions and brave dogs. Logan kept the stories gentle. No violence, just courage, loyalty, and teamwork. Shadow, as always, stole the show. One afternoon, Emily joined Logan on the porch. "I've been thinking," she said, sipping hot cider. "Henry always wanted this place to be more than a tavern, a place that helped people, a place with purpose." Logan glanced toward the lake, remembering the bunker, the bells, the charter. He succeeded. The tavern saved lives long before we came along. "And it could again," Emily said. Logan looked at her, brow raised. "You and Shadow, you have experience most people don't. Search and rescue, tracking, surviving out there." She nodded toward the tree line. "Kids here could learn from you. Veterans, too." Logan thought about it quietly. About the tunnels beneath the tavern. About the bell. About Henry's final words. "Protect the tunnel. It saved us once. It'll save you, too." A vision formed, slowly at first, then clearly. A school. Training grounds. A program that helped veterans and K-9s heal through service. He felt Shadow's head rest gently on his knee, as if saying, "You already know the answer." Logan smiled. "We could call it the Blackwater Rescue School." Emily's face lit up. "Logan, that's perfect." The grand reopening took place 3 weeks after the courtroom victory. Snow covered the ground, but lanterns lined the path from the road to the tavern. The lake reflected the warm, golden lights, shimmering under the soft winter sky. People filled the porch and yard, bundled in coats and scarves, talking, laughing, celebrating. Logan stepped onto the porch, Shadow at his side, moving with a dignified stride that hid his healing shoulder. When the crowd saw them, every conversation fell silent. Then applause erupted, loud, genuine, grateful. Lila handed Logan a wooden sign carved by local craftsmen. Black letters glowed against varnished pine. Blackwater Tavern and Rescue School for veterans, community, and K-9 teams. Logan ran a hand over the carving. "Thank you," he said, voice thick. "This isn't just my place. It's Henry's legacy, and yours too." Shadow barked once, as if to punctuate the moment. A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. Inside the tavern, warm light washed over polished tables, freshly painted walls, and framed photos of the old rescue teams discovered in the bunker. In the center of the room hung the Blackwater bell, restored, shining, ready to ring when needed. Shadow walked to it and tapped his paw 3 times. Logan laughed softly. "Not a warning this time, huh?" Shadow looked up at him, tail sweeping the floor in slow, content arcs. "No," Logan said gently, touching the bell. "Just a reminder." He looked around at the smiling faces, the rebuilt walls, the flickering lanterns reflecting across the lake. Blackwater is safe now. The tavern doors reopened. The crowd flowed inside. Music began to play softly from an old radio. The room filled with warmth, of community, of hope, of healing. Logan knelt beside Shadow, rubbing his ears. "You did good, buddy. Real good." Shadow leaned into him, eyes half closed in peace. Outside, the lanterns drifted across the lake, carrying wishes from the townspeople. Small flames of gratitude floating gently away. For the first time since he left the seals, since the nightmares, since the day everything fell apart, Logan Hale felt whole again. The tavern wasn't just rebuilding, it was reborn. And so was he. If you believe some places, and some people, are worth standing up for, drop a 1 in the comments. And if you want more stories about justice, second chances, and the quiet strength of folks who don't back down, make sure you subscribe and stick with us for the next one.